guys, this is John at FTI Performance down here in Florida, and I'd like to go over changing the stator and a bolt-together converter. We've had some people concerned just because they're intimidated, they've never done it. If you make mistakes, it can be very costly. Why don't you come on a little bit closer and we'll get to it. Hey guys, the first step I like to do, taking a stator out of a bolt-together, is to mark the orientation of the converter. This will be explained later. The next step, we're going to take out all the bolts. Some of them have already been pre-loosened. All right, our next step after all the nuts have been removed and the converter's been marked for orientation is we have press bolts that are included with the converter. These are used to help pop the converter apart so we don't damage it. All right, so we want to walk the converter half up, so when we tighten down the bolts a little bit at a time all the way around. We got 3 bolts right here. All right, so after we got the pump, as you can see, has been lifted up with the press bolts. Now we're going to lift the pump half off, and I always like to put everything in the same order that I take it apart. This way you won't make mistakes. So that's the pump half. Another little secret we do is we try to use our phone, if you're not familiar with it, take pictures of each step. This is important because a lot of people get intimidated and you'll forget, and it's very important to have everything back in the same direction that it was. All right, the next step is you're starting to disassemble the converter. You want to make sure you take the bearing and you see which way it's facing because it has to go back in the same orientation. There may or may not be a shim underneath because we run shims on both sides of the converter depending on the series and the style of your converter. So it's really important that they go back in the same spot because you can cause problems. The next step, of course, is just to lift the stator up. It just slides right out. And then you have the stator cap. And then in this particular instance, there's a blank slug below that we're going to remove. There's no snap rings on this style stator. Some stators have a snap ring, so it all depends on your converter. So the parts easily come out, and now we're going to swap stators out. Well, now that we've got the stator taken apart and disassembled, here's the new stator. We're going to reassemble it back in the same reverse order. Stator cap, that just sits in there. And then now you want to make sure you check your bearing and shims, make sure they stay centered up so they don't slide one way or the other. All right, next step after installing the stator is to reinstall the bearing in the shim pack if it had the shim on the top. So let's reference our phone in case we need to use that. The bearing shim is installed back in the same orientation it was when we disassembled it. The next step is taking the pump half. We got to turn it back over because we need to take the press bolts back out. All right, the next step is going to reinstall the pump half of the converter. If you remember at the beginning, we put the orientation mark here, and we put an orientation mark on the pump. And the reason being is the converters get a set, and sometimes it's going to fight you putting it all back together if it gets clocked a different direction. And then we're going to press it together and get it seated. And then we'll start some nuts to get this thing back together. The next step is going to be tighten down the nuts. We want to use our impact gun to speed up the process, but you don't want to run it down tight with the impact because this is a constant problem of failure with customers is they stretch the studs and it causes problems. So we'll do this in a star pattern. Now the final step on our stator exchange is we're going to have to torque the bolts. This is a very important step because if you over torque the bolts, you have failure. If you under torque the bolts, you have failure. Refer to your owner's manual for the instructions. We're going to set the torque. And we'll want to do this in a star pattern too. Now that our stator exchange is accomplished, the next step is to get it back in the car, get your tune-up right, turn on the FTI wind light. If you have any tech questions, give us a call and we'll be happy to help you through this.